All those tiny, seemingly insignificant details in the world around you, things like how a cafeteria is laid out, or just a little dot on a form you're filling out, well, they're actually shaping your decisions in a huge way. They're influencing everything from what you eat for lunch to how much money you end up saving. So today, we're going to dive deep into how these simple, often invisible designs are guiding our choices in some really profound and honestly kind of sneaky ways. And to get started, I've got a pretty weird question for you. How on earth can a fake fly, yeah, a fly, actually change human behavior? I know, it sounds totally bizarre, but stick with me, because the answer unlocks this incredibly powerful idea about how our minds really work. Get this, that little etched fly, when they put it inside the urinals at Amsterdam's airport, led to an 80% reduction in, well, spillage. 80%! So what in the world is going on here? How does that even work? All right, so the fly in the urinal. This little trick isn't just some clever hack to make the janitor's job easier. No, it's actually the perfect real-world example of a concept that won economist Richard Thaler a Nobel Prize. He calls it a nudge. So what exactly is a nudge? Well, it's any small feature in your environment that kind of grabs your attention and predictably changes your behavior. And the key thing is, it doesn't force you to do anything. It doesn't forbid any options. It's just a gentle prompt. In this case, it's simple, right? Give a guy a target and, well, he'll aim. And the reason this ridiculously simple trick works so well is that it shines a giant spotlight on a fundamental flaw right at the heart of old-school economic theory. So let's talk about econs versus humans. See, the problem is this huge, massive gap between how traditional economics thinks people behave and how we, as actual, living, breathing humans really are. To really get this, Thaler basically invents two characters. In one corner, you've got econs. These are the folks from the economics textbooks. They're perfectly rational, flawless calculators. Then in the other corner, you've got humans, and that's us. We're predictably irrational, we struggle with long division, let alone complex financial calculations, and self-control? Yeah, we're pretty prone to temptation. Let's take a closer look at the world of the econ. I mean, this is wild. The creature that all of traditional economic theory is built on is basically a superhero. They're as smart as the smartest economist, they can solve infinitely complex problems in their head, they have zero self-control issues, they've never even had a hangover. It's this perfectly strategic, completely self-interested being with flawless willpower. Sounds like anyone you know didn't think so. And then there's us, the humans. Our attention spans? Pretty limited. We're often absent-minded, we struggle with stuff like saving money for the future or sticking to a diet. We're totally influenced by emotion and what our friends are doing. Social pressure is a big deal. And we rely on all these mental shortcuts to just get through the day. And here's the kicker. The world we live in, a lot of the time, it's designed for those perfect econs, not for us actual humans who have to navigate it. This isn't a new idea. The social scientist Herb Simon was pointing this out decades ago. He basically said, look, the whole field of economics is built on these very specific, and let's be honest, completely unrealistic assumptions. We literally built our most important financial theories for a creature that doesn't even exist. So, okay, we're flawed humans living in a world that was built for perfect econs. What's the solution? Well, this is where we get back to the power of the nudge. It's a whole new way of thinking, a framework for designing better choices for real people. The philosophy behind all this has a kind of clunky name. It's called libertarian paternalism. Now I know, those two words sound like they should be fighting each other, right? But here's how it works. The libertarian part is simple. We're all about freedom of choice. Nothing gets banned, nobody's forced to do anything. The paternalism part means we try to gently steer people toward making better decisions, and this is key, as they themselves would define better. It's not about forcing an agenda on you, it's about helping you make the choice you'd probably make anyway if you had all the time in the world and were an expert on the subject. Okay, so how do you actually do this? The tool for it is something called choice architecture. And a choice architect? Well, that's literally anyone who designs the environment where people make choices. Think about it. The person who designs a website, a restaurant menu, even a government form, they're all choice architects, whether they realize it or not. And this leads to a really crucial point. There is no such thing as a neutral design. It just doesn't exist. Think about a school cafeteria, right? The way you arrange the food is absolutely going to influence what kids eat. You could put the healthy fruit at eye level, or you could put the sugary desserts there instead. Even if you tried to arrange it randomly,
that random arrangement is still a design. So since you have to choose some kind of layout, the big question is, why not choose the one that gently nudges kids toward being healthier?
Now, one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, tools a choice architect has is the default. The default is simply what happens if you do nothing. And defaults are unbelievably sticky. Why? Because we humans have a ton of inertia. We're busy, we're distracted, and a lot of the time, we just go with the path of least resistance.
So let's see this in action with a really high-stakes example. I'm talking life and death. How do you get more people to become organ donors? It's a massive challenge, but the answer, amazingly, might just come down to changing one little default setting. Okay, so check this out. Most countries have what's called an opt-in system. The default setting is not a donor. You have to actively check a box or fill out a form to become one. But some other countries just flip it. They use an opt-out system. The default is that you are a donor, and you have to take action to say you don't want to be. The difference in results it's absolutely staggering. Countries with that simple opt-out system have way, way higher rates of organ donation, all from changing that one default. And look, defaults are just one tool in the toolbox. Good choice architecture uses other things too, like giving people immediate feedback. You know that paint that goes on pink but dries white so you can see where you've already painted on a white ceiling? That's a nudge. Or leveraging social influence. It turns out telling people most of your neighbors are using less energy than you is way more powerful than just begging them to save energy. All right, so this stuff isn't just for flies in urinals or food in a cafeteria. This same way of thinking can be applied to some of the biggest, most complex systemic failures you can imagine, like the 2008 financial crisis. This quote right here is from Alan Greenspan, who was the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve for a long time. And it's a huge deal. He's basically admitting in a state of shocked disbelief that the whole model he believed in was wrong. The core idea that these rational, self-interested institutions, the Econs, would police themselves and prevent a disaster, it just completely and totally fell apart when it hit the real world. So if we look at that crisis through this new human lens, the real causes become crystal clear. First, you have what's called bounded rationality. That's just a fancy way of saying our brains can only process so much information. Mortgages got so ridiculously complex that normal people couldn't understand them. But Thaler argues that even the CEOs of the banks didn't fully grasp the insane risks they were taking on. Then you have bounded willpower, our struggle with temptation and self-control. You had homeowners taking on massive debt just to keep up with the Joneses, and at the same time, you had Wall Street CEOs taking on huge risks to keep up with their competitors. It was a perfect storm of human behavior. So what's the nudge solution to something that massive? Well, it's not what you might think. It's not about adding thousands of pages of heavy-handed regulations. Instead, a huge part of the answer is just smarter disclosure. It's about giving people information that's actually designed for how real humans think and process things. Here's a fantastic example for something like credit cards. The proposed nudge is brilliant and has 3 simple steps. 1, force the credit card companies to provide a simple electronic file with all their pricing formulas and fees. 2, require them to also give you a file of your own personal usage data. Now, you're not going to read through all that raw data, right? You're a human. But that's where step 3 comes in. Independent third-party websites could take those 2 files, mash them together, and instantly show you, with one single click, hey, if you'd been using this credit card last year, you would have saved X $100. It's not about banning fees. It's about using technology to empower you to easily make a much better choice. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. The world around you is already full of nudges. They're shaping your choices every single day, whether they were put there on purpose or just by accident. Choice architecture is everywhere, all the time. So the real question isn't, should we be nudged? Because we already are. The real question is, how can we start to consciously and thoughtfully design better nudges for ourselves, for our communities, for our entire economy? So that leaves me with one final thought for you. If you could pick one system, one form, one choice in your life to redesign, what would you redesign first to make it better for us, humans?